and then we'll get started. And I'll try to keep time. I don't know how Phil usually does it. He usually ends up keeping time somehow really well somewhere else. I've just got my phone here to keep us on track.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually look at the clock on the screen, but I know he does something and he.
Yeah, because I usually do that too, but we end up starting like 5 minutes after a lot of the time. And so I'm
That's
like,
true.
I'm freaking out. And he's over here saying, oh, we've got like 20 minutes to go. No big deal.
Yeah, yeah, I have noticed that too.
Funny guy. Okay, let's see. All right, first time emceeing this, our full show. So let's see how it goes, Santi.
Let's do it. Oh, don't forget to do what he usually does. Mention the station and all of that.
Yes, I have that. I just got to remember to mention it a couple other times during the show.
Yeah.
I should be able to. I've got the notes pretty structured, so hopefully that works. All right. I'll lead us in here. Welcome, everyone, to Flyover Footy. You're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS or maybe through the podcast platform of your choice. And either way, we thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Baker, and this week we have our usual Flyover Fallout crew for you. Myself and Santiago Beltran will be your guide through all things St. Louis City this week. We're going to start with a 3-1 defeat to Real Salt Lake in the midweek match. Then we'll cover a few player notes and look ahead to a pretty big Western Conference showdown with the San Jose Earthquakes. Unfortunately, no Phil means that we don't have a Santi goal call to start us off with, but we do have the legend himself. So, Santi, how are you this fine evening?
Doing great, Matt. This week is a little bit different with a game midweek, so quick turnaround for Saturday against San Jose, and obviously a loss last night. But City has now to turn the page and get ready for San Jose.
Yeah, a lot going on, and a tight midweek match means we have a lot to pack into this one. So let's get it started. Unfortunately, it's not a good way to get it started. 3-1 loss to Real Salt Lake. We knew that Real Salt Lake was really impressive in their road form. They're now 4-0-2 on the road since their last loss on the road to FC Dallas back on April 15th. So at this point, we're just another cog in their efficient wheel on the road. But for St. Louis, it's more of another example of life without Leuven not turning out as we wanted it to. So the lineup that we rolled out for RSL was the second lineup without Edward Leuven in the lineup and the first without Kyle Hebert due to a red card suspension. So we ran out with Roman Berkey in net, Johnny Nelson, Tim Parker, Lucas Bartlett, and Jake Nerwinski on our back line. Jabulu Blom, Indiana Vasilev were our midfielders. Jared Stroud, Tomas Ostrak, Nico Gioacchini up top. And Santi, I really think that a lot of the things that we did were losing track early on. The lineup here, I think, utilized our wings very heavily, and it was markedly different after the first few minutes than an Edward Leuven produced lineup. But the biggest takeaways I have from our lineup were the effectiveness of our wings and what we tried to do through our wings in creating chances, but end of the day, there wasn't a whole lot that we could produce in the final third.
Yeah, it was definitely a different game. I was very hopeful and after what the team showed against Nashville, but obviously a couple of changes yesterday. Chapulo Blom, after being on national duty, comes back in the starting lineup, and then Celio Pompeo for Rasmus Alm. But
I did forget to mention Celio, didn't I? Yeah, Celio did start. Yeah, that's a good point. I think I forgot to mention him.
Yeah, I missed that too. But yeah, he started instead of Rasmus Alm, and I was hoping it was going to be something similar to what the team showed in Nashville. But Real Salt Lake also had a good plan. They executed it well, and they show why they came to City Park in a 5-game undefeated streak during their away games.
Yeah, and we're going to have a lot more on each of the individual goals in our full podcast, so check that out. But for purposes of here, we want to take away some big important moments, and we want to see how these goals were scored and what really went wrong for St. Louis City, because it happened rather quickly, just 15 minutes in. Diego Luna ended up scoring a goal that it was just the first example of a transition offense being successful for Real Salt Lake. Thankfully, though, just a few minutes later, Nico Gioacchini was able to put one in, which is an example of our wings being effective with Jake Nerwinski having the assist. And then, Santi, it seemed like after that punch counterpunch, the yellow cards took over a little bit. And in the 29th minute, Jared Stroud received his first yellow card for persistent infringement. Just 1 minute later, Tomas Ostrak had a foul resulting in a yellow card. And it seemed like that took us out of our element a little bit. We weren't as successful in the midfield where we wondered last week, how effective would Indiana Vassilev be in that Edu Leuven role, a little deeper than he had been playing with our successful attack, him and Nico partnering. And all of these things just kind of led into really trying to keep and play for the tie, I think, in the first half. What did you see after some of those goals, or even with those goals, that spoke to the overall effectiveness of St. Louis here?
Well, I like how City responded after Real Salt Lake's goal, and they ended the first half in a good momentum. It looked like they were going to turn around the game, but a couple of things I saw yesterday, and you were mentioning Indiana Basilev playing more towards center mid on a defensive role, and I don't know if it is because he was used to playing more offensively, but he had a like couple of turnovers yesterday. Um, at the end, they didn't result in a goal from RSL, but I think he was struggling to basically be in that mindset of, okay, now I'm a number six, I'm in this role, and if I make a mistake, like close to the box, is not the same as if I made it on the opposing field. So I think he was struggling with that a little bit. And again, Jabula Blom back to the lineup. He was, even though he had just returned to St. Louis on Monday after a long trip and being with the national team, I was surprised he played 90 minutes and he seemed okay, and was the normal Jabulo Blom, being everywhere and recovering balls, pressuring. So I really like what I saw from him.
Yeah, that was absolutely exciting to see, and we hoped that we would see 60 minutes of Jabulu Blom after the travel he had to go through. He didn't feature in the South African match against Morocco, but this was a pleasant surprise to see. And a persistent thought to me, Santi, as we talk about the Real Salt Lake game, is as much as we're excited to see 90 minutes out of Jabulu Blom, as much as we were excited to see 90 minutes out of Jared Stroud, well, some people were excited. Some people weren't that excited in the later moments of the game. But either way, midweek match, players go 90 who are being asked to run a lot and who the fitness is a question in coming back from outside activities. You think about that as how's that going to affect the San Jose Earthquake game in their availability, and especially the length of their availability. So when we get to the lineups and talk about some of the Quakes considerations, those are some thoughts that are going to be taken away from me, is the amount of guys who went 90 minutes. Looking at I think it was Johnny Nelson, Jake Nerwinski, Jared Stroud, Jabula Blom, those kinds of guys. Tim Parker.
Tim Parker too.
Yeah, and Parker especially. So before we get too much into Tim Parker in this match, I did want to touch on the comparison you made with Edu Leuven and what we were trying to do with missing him. And I alluded to a lot of our attack going through our wings, and you saw overlapping runs with Johnny Nelson and with Jared Stroud. And some of that to me was actually pretty effective in moving the ball up the field. It's just that when we got the ball into the final third, there weren't very many opportunities to finish the ball that we took advantage of. The ball was placed in the box pretty well. You had a lot of Jared Stroud, you had a lot of Indiana Vassilev crossing in. They combined for 9 crosses in this match, whereas Real Salt Lake as a team only had 7. So we're getting balls in the box. It's just that whereas you would have a normal Edu Leuven just outside the box or moving up higher in the field where he's individually being very creative and creating space with the ball and then finding somebody, usually through the midfield. We didn't have that as much. And so the stat that I had is that Leuven averages about 34 passes per game. And that's in all portions of the field, where we know his best position is the box to box. He's played the 10, he's played the 6, but he's best as box to box, allowing that freedom. Indiana Vassilev, in the same role that Leuven plays in this game, only had 10 successful passes. And that isn't abnormal for Vasilev. So I don't want to say that he did a terrible job. It's just the fact that in a regular game, he's not tasked with needing to do that. And an average game, passing wise for Indiana Vasilev, didn't translate well to replacing the value that Edu Leuven provided in that position.
Yeah, yeah, I saw when you posted that stat. Is It's amazing to see how much impact Leuven has, and it will probably take a couple of games for the team to get used to live without Leuven for a few weeks. But we saw the same thing when Joao Klaus went out with an injury after that game against Colorado. It took a few games for the team to figure it out and
Took 3 games. Yeah.
putting the pieces where they needed to be. And I think it's gonna be the same thing. I'm sure we're gonna talk about a little bit about this when we talk about the game against San Jose. But Bradley Carnell, both on Monday and today, something that caught my attention on both press conference, he mentioned trusting the process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when we go into San Jose and start talking about possible lineups, we can touch on that. But I totally agree with him. It's a long season, and people keep asking, "Oh, we need some more players," but I think he's doing the right thing, and I like trusting the process. Yeah, the team may need a player or two, but you gotta go with the guys you have, give a chance to the young guys, and see what they can do at this level.
And some of my stats speak to the effectiveness of those individual players in their piece of the puzzle. So you mentioned Jabulu Blom. He led everyone in the entire game with 6 tackles and interceptions. So he provided that bigger than normal body that he always brings to the table in his ability to disrupt. And he did that very well. And it was good to see that return to form so quickly after being gone from international duty. But some other things are that Blom and Nerwinski in particular had some really good progressions themselves. I mentioned that Johnny Nelson and Jared Stroud had some good give and goes. Jabula Blom and Jake Nerwinski had 7 passes each into the final third. So if you're looking at how we were delivering the ball high up the field without Edu Leuven, you're looking at those kinds of guys. Tim Parker was a pretty good contributor there too. And whereas I would hope to see that from Jabula Blom, I would hope to see that from Jake Nerwinski if we're leveraging our wings in a much more vital role to move the ball up. It was successful with Jake Nerwinski, but seeing Tim Parker be more active in that portion is kind of where I see us as that was out of necessity and not necessarily out of we need to be looking at Tim Parker as a playmaker on our team. A lot of the time, I noticed Tim Parker moving higher up the field. I saw some quotes that were, I think, poking fun that he was playing a central defensive midfield position half the time in how high up the field he was and what he was trying to do with the ball. And that it you could see him at times try to make decisions in where he wanted to send the ball vertically and ended up passing off to Johnny Nelson on the wing or back over to Bartlett and not able to find space to create and put that ball to Blom or Indiana Vasilev. And a few of the times, I think that is what ended up leading to. I mean, you can make an argument for all 3 goals having a Tim Parker placement issue, whereas there was a high up on the field that allowed transition that didn't include Tim Parker in the defense. You had Tim Parker step up to Michael Chang for that second goal that happened right after halftime. And as he stepped up, the pass to Luna and then to the back heel to Krylik occurred. And so Tim Parker wasn't a factor in that. Jake Nerwinski too far away. The third goal where you just had Tim Parker kind of too far out of position higher up and it wasn't able to track back in the right order. So Krylik had his second. There, I mean, we'll dive into these in our wind down afterwards, but that's a big takeaway for me is Tim Parker's positioning and what we can do going into the Quakes game to mitigate that, to allow him to not play such a vital role in trying to create chances, allow him to stay back with Lucas Bartlett and prevent himself being removed from some of those defensive opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, I was surprised with what he was doing yesterday. Although some other games he has played similar positioning and it has worked out. He has been able to create chances, but just didn't happen yesterday. But so obviously, when the team loses and somebody's involved in the goals, obviously people start talking about it and complaining. So So yeah, this morning I don't spend a lot of time looking at what people comment on the groups, but yeah, you could see there was some hate against Tim Parker on some of those.
And Bradley Carnell today on Thursday's press conference was very clear that nobody's to blame. It's the system, and you have individuals who, to your point, are going to take the fall when certain things happen. And maybe it's not necessarily Parker individually. Maybe it's more so what he was asked to do with other personnel on the field. And we will touch on that left back position here later on. But I do want, as we kind of transition into the news and the previewing San Jose, it's interesting to me that Damir Kreilach was named Player of the Match Day this week. 2 goals, 2 goals, and really a lot of contributions in other areas. But noteworthy to me that 2 games without Edu Leuven, 2 matches that a designated player has played against St. Louis and gotten Player of the Match Day. Hani Mukhtar's a whole other beast, but Damir Kreilach is no slouch himself. I this is not a trend that I want to see continue, Santi.
Yeah, and Krylak was basically a non-factor back in March when City
Yep.
beat Real Salt Lake 4-0. But yesterday he had a great game. He had those 2 goals. He was also involved in the first one, and everything went through him. But yeah, hopefully we won't see a third designated player performing against City on Saturday when City visits San Jose.
Yeah, and this is a San Jose team that we know Christian Espinoza is that player, and we're going to touch on him in a few minutes. But before that, you're listening to Flyover Footy. We're on the Big 550 KTRS as the pregame show. We thank you for joining us, and we're going to talk about a few player notes as we transition to our Quakes preview. First, Santi, the obvious, no changes to the statuses of Klaus, Leuven, or Nilsson for that matter. Klaus, earlier this week, found out he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. Edward Leuven, we found out this week he's going to be out at least 4 to 6 weeks. And Joachim Nilsson hasn't really been given a timeline lately. The 2 or 3 weeks has almost expired at this point. And what we saw at Thursday's training is he was a full participant in team activities. He was playing the soccer tennis. He was participating in a lot of the drills. It seems like for Joachim Nilsson, it's just a matter of time before he just appears in a lineup.
Yeah, so on Monday, during the press conference, he had previously, I think, on a note that Tom Timmerman wrote, he had previously told Tom that it was 4 to 6 weeks, and that was
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago. So Tom asked him, so now that is 2 weeks later, is it 2 to 4 weeks? And he agreed that it was going to happen soon. He didn't provide more details, but yeah, he's back, and I hope he comes back. He has a chance to come back before this break, before Leagues Cup, and maybe we will see him in Leagues Cup, and we're able to see what he can contribute to this backline that is already strong. But having him will give the team more options. We may see 3 center backs, which we have seen at times this season, but I think it will be different when he comes back.
John Bell as well, a center back in that depth, was back with the team after sustaining some kind of a foot injury in the cryo chamber. Whatever was impacting him and his ability to wear a cleat appears to have been resolved. He was a full participant as well. So for everyone who's looking forward to more John Bell, that seems like that could be on the horizon, whether it's with the first team or second team. And then Santi, the biggest overarching factor for Thursday's training that we saw are a lot of players were regenning. The players that we saw on the field were those who didn't feature very many minutes. They played in the second half. Those coming up from City 2 who are signed to City contracts. Bradley Carnell had some interesting quotes. I asked him about his approach to the left back position, and he offered instead kind of pivoting to all the players who are available, specifically calling out Aziel Jackson and Josh Yarrow as impact players last week, along with Rasmus Alm. Carnell said, we're looking at who recovered and who can go, saying some guys are a lot more durable and do a lot of regen and make sure they can turn around, whether it's age related or just physics related. They take a bit to recover. We're just looking to get a fresh, energized group out there. And so thinking through, there are no fresh injuries that we know about. And the lineup that we're going to be looking at for San Jose is going to depend heavily on the Thursday, Friday regen capabilities of some of the guys who went a pretty good amount of minutes against a Real Salt Lake team, whether it's Jared Stroud or Jabula Blom going 90. Any other notes on the players you want to talk about real quick?
No, no, I think you covered all. I'm a little bit worried about Blom because he went 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Not sure if he'll be able to go 90 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, that will be interesting. All right, let's pivot over to our preview of the San Jose Earthquakes. As we set the stage, St. Louis is now second place in the West with 29 points through 18 games. They have a 9-7-2 record. That's 9 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws, with 35 goals scored and a plus 12 goal differential. It's been dwindling a bit the past few games, but still there. Away, because that's important in this match, St. Louis is 3-4-1, 3 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. Notable in the past couple of games, I'm sure nobody has overlooked this, that St. Louis has only 2 goals in 2 games without Edu Leuven, both of them scored by Nico Gioacchini. But more importantly and worrisome, we have conceded 6 total goals in 2 games without Edu Leuven. The St. Louis form in the last 3 matches includes this 3-1 loss we just got done talking about, the 3-1 loss at Nashville previously, and a 1-1 draw against the LA Galaxy. The unfortunate stat I saw is that this is the longest winless streak that St. Louis has gone through of the entire season in 4 games. So knowing those three, and then I think it was FC Dallas before that, if you count that as
Yeah, yeah. I guess
occurring.
depending on how you count that one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
funny math when it comes into that. But on the other side of the fence, San Jose comes into this fifth in the West with 27 points. So pretty close there with St. Louis through 19 games themselves. They have a 7-6-6 record with 22 goals scored and a -2 goal differential. The unfortunate thing for St. Louis here is that San Jose is 6-0-3 at home. They have yet to lose a match at home, and they did sustain a shutout in their last home match on June 17th against Portland. So that, as far as recent form, we've got that going for us. They haven't had, this is a really interesting fact, Santi. They haven't had the same result in back-to-back matches since their second and third games of the year that kicked off March. They've been a very up and down team, inconsistent, but it's not a great sign for St. Louis because their last 3 matches were a 4-1 loss last Wednesday against Houston Dynamo in that midweek match, a 0-0 draw at home against Portland, and a 2-1 win before that against Philadelphia Union. The ebb and the flow, if you take that as gospel, is leading to flowing in the right direction for San Jose in this one. But the other thing that San Jose has to take into account is the past few matches, they've had a lot of players on international duty. And most of those players, minus Cade Cowell, are coming back. So knowing the form St. Louis has been in, knowing the availability that San Jose is for some of their star players and recent form, how do you see this one playing out?
yeah, so they will get some of those players back from international duty. The other thing that is notable when I was looking at who played against St. Louis and who has been playing is their goalkeeper has been really good. Well, taking yesterday's aside, he has been really good. Daniel, Brazilian goalkeeper, he
Yep.
didn't play against City back in March when San Jose came to St. Louis, but before last night, he had been doing really well. The 5 games before last night's game. He played and he only allowed 2 goals, and I think within that time frame he had the highest percentage of saves in the league.
Yep.
It was more than 80%. And still, even with last night's result, 77.5% of save percentage for Daniel. So I think he's a great, compared to when San Jose was here, he's gonna be a player that will have an impact. Carlos Greso is back from international duty with Ecuador. Obviously, Kate Cowell won't be with the team, but San Jose is coming strong. They are strong at home. Only 3 ties. I was looking at who they tied to. They had a couple of scoreless ties against Toronto and Portland, and also a 1-1 game against Dallas. So yeah, undefeated team at home. City needing points. It's gonna be an interesting matchup for City, and two teams that are at the top of the conference, with the conference table being so congested. And St. Louis, even after the loss, still kept well, lost first place, but now second place. But a lot of teams moved up. Now Houston has 27 points and has been winning, has been in great form. after losing to City early in June. But yeah, now every game is like a playoff game. What I call a 6 point game, because
Yep.
even though we're 16 weeks away from or 16 match days away from the end of the season, now St. Louis is starting to play teams for the second time, and to me, these are games that really matter. And if you win both of your games against a team, it could make a difference at the end of the season. Unfortunately, so far, City they beat Portland and they beat Portland and they beat Real Salt Lake away. And when they came to City Park, they returned the favor and got the 3 points. So maybe this third one will be the charm, playing San Jose for the second time. Maybe this will be the one time that City gets the 3 points, the 6 points in the
Yeah,
series.
MLS gets a lot of hate sometimes for the regular season not meaning as much, the perception being that it doesn't mean as much because of how many teams are allowed into the playoffs, 9 per conference right now. But to me, that the way that the season has shaken out kind of flips that script on its head, in the sense that in the Western Conference in particular, there are 9 points that separate the second and 12th place teams. So you're talking about these 6 point matches, Santi, and how important they are. It quite literally is, and every match counts with a lot of these teams in your own conference. Because whether it is an LA Galaxy or a Colorado Rapids that you've tied, and those are kind of bottom dwellers of the team, those are teams that are taking points away from you at the top of the table. So when you get into these dogfights with an LAFC or a Seattle, and you might drop points, then they pick up 6 points, so to speak. You're putting yourself in some pretty poor position later on in the season, where you get down into the second, third week from the end, and suddenly any given team could be in sixth or seventh place and find themselves on the outside looking in when the playoffs come.
Yeah, now these games really matter, and San Jose 27 points, so with a win, they could pass City on the table. So now it's gonna come down to every week is an important game. Still a couple of games against Eastern Conference rivals and 2 games against LAFC due to some rescheduling. But from now on, the rest of the games are teams that you have played already once.
You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS or any podcast platform of your choice that you're listening to us. We thank you so much. My name is Matt Baker. I'm with Santiago Beltran. Santi, let's dive into some of the stats, and we know the form that San Jose's been in at home. They're unbeaten in their last 10 home matches dating back to last season. They haven't allowed more than one goal in any of those matches. So knowing their form at home, and you put that together with St. Louis's away form that we haven't won since, I believe it was March 25th on the
Hmm.
road, things aren't trending well, but it's all about what happens on the field. It's all about that 90 minutes. And Carnell loves to say that's soccer, and any given Saturday, so to speak, can happen. There are some interesting nuances to the styles of play for both of these teams in what we can expect from San Jose. We kind of know the style from St. Louis, though we don't really know a St. Louis identity without Edu Leuven, so even that's in flux a little bit. San Jose comes into this match 8th in the league in accurate back zone passes. So this is one of those indicators that they like to control the ball. They average around 49% possession. And when they control the ball, they move it horizontally. They look for openings in some of their switches. They are 8th in the league in the number of corner kicks taken. So you can look for them to try, and when they do make the ball or try to get the ball into the final third, they're not shy about trying to play it off of the opponent. So you might see some physicality going on in their attacking third. I mentioned some of the back passes. Well, San Jose is 6th from last in the league in key passes, so they're going to pass the ball around, but they haven't had a whole lot of success in passing the ball into dangerous zones consistently and allowing some of those assists to take place. Comparing San Jose and St. Louis in a few key areas, St. Louis and San Jose are both in the top 10 in goals outside the 18. St. Louis with 6, San Jose with 5. We know some of the key contributors to St. Louis's 6 are out in Klaus and Leuven, so interesting to see if they're able to find success outside the box. St. Louis and San Jose also both in the top 10 in interceptions. St. Louis with 202 and San Jose with 197 on the year. St. Louis has a game in hand, so take that into consideration. That, to me, Santi, speaks to the absolute vital importance of Ajbulu Balom, Tim Parker, and whoever Parker's backline partner is in the center back role, whether it's Hebert or Bartlett, and what they're going to have to do to disrupt a Jeremy Abobasi or Christian Espinoza in their attacking third.
Yeah, and Espinosa and obviously, obviously the key players, and showing consistency. They were also the key players last year, and doing the same thing this year. Espinosa having a great season. I think he has slowed down a little bit, but a few weeks ago, he was one of the candidates for MVP of the league,
Mm-hmm.
and he's very important for San Jose. Has scored 8 goals this year, has assisted in 6 goals. So definitely a player to keep an eye on, and hopefully we don't go with DP having another DP having a great game against St. Louis City.
That's the player to watch for. We're gonna talk about a few players. Christian Espinoza is the one to watch for if you're a St. Louis City fan. The number 10, he's a DP midfielder. He plays on the right side on their attacking role. He takes some of their set pieces, leads the team, like you said, in goals and assists. So if there was a target to go to that potential third in a row DP that could do us harm, it's going to be Christian Espinoza. The other guy to watch out for in their attack, like we mentioned, is Jeremy Abobasi, number 11, their striker at the number 9 position. Second in goals with 7 on the team. And then you look at a guy like Carlos Grueso. Santi, you alluded to Grueso. He's a designated player, number 7, central midfielder. He was the guy that San Jose signed at the beginning of the season when the allocation order was kaput. And we had conversations at the beginning of the year of St. Louis possibly trading and acquiring GAM for that. That never came to fruition, but Grueso sure did for San Jose, and he's been a difference maker for them.
Yeah, he has 3 assists this year, and he's now back from international duty. He's the one that got injured when San Jose came to St. Louis, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
first half.
Yes.
So he will be looking forward to playing City and being healthy, and he has been a difference maker. So that's another player to keep an eye on now that he's healthy and has been in form, playing more games for San Jose and also playing with his national team.
Yeah, a couple other guys to watch for: Benji Kikanovic, who I believe will be taking Cade Cowell's position on the right side of their attack. He comes in here, and I think because Cowell's going to be with the men's national team, he saw action against Houston. He's
Hmm.
likely to feature in this one. Jackson Ewell, number 14, U.S. men's national team. He makes appearances for them. Hamira Montero, number 35, central midfielder. And then Santi, you alluded to Daniel, number 42, Brazilian goalkeeper. And he's won the job, and boy, has he not looked back. The stats you mentioned earlier are terrifying if you're thinking about St. Louis, who is struggling to finish their attacks, who has a poor road form. And you wonder how St. Louis is going to be able to create something new with an offense that doesn't include Klaus and Leuven, knowing they're going up against such an informed goalkeeper. Last week, midweek match notwithstanding, and you do have to take that with a grain of salt because of the amount of international players and stars that San Jose was without, and they rested some players too. I don't look to that Houston match as much, but I wonder what St. Louis can do. And I think there was a quote from Carnell today at Thursday's press conference where he was talking about he doesn't think that the loss of Leuven really changes where they intentionally try to move the ball. I asked a question about, because I mentioned the passes from Edu Leuven and Indiana Vasilev and how vastly different they were, and just how against the Real Salt Lake team, we were just moving the ball up on the wings so much. And we seemed to go back to something that worked when Klaus was playing, as opposed to what we had figured out without Klaus, but still had Leuven. And Carnell answered that question about whether they were trying to intentionally move the ball up the wings somewhere that San Jose themselves like to play. And he said, no, Indiana Vasilev, Jabula Blom, they both show qualities that they can hold the ball in the midfield, in the sixth. If we get off to a shaky start and it takes longer to get back into rhythm, then that could be one thing. Indiana's been playing up the field, and now he's finding himself deeper. And like you said, Santi, a mistake at the sixth position, everyone immediately blinks an eye, as opposed to when you make a mistake in the 10 because it can be turned around. This tells me that when we're talking about how St. Louis can beat a San Jose team that is strong on the wings, they like to play with all that width, they attack down the right-hand side. This could be a very wing-heavy battle that Indiana Vasilev is probably going to find himself deeper in the match again. And it wouldn't surprise me, because he didn't go the full 90 against Houston, to have him start, to have him play in that box to box. and try to make more things happen, because it's, to me, it's his confidence. I see a lot of, we're going to have to trust that we can play the ball into Indy, and he's going to be able to make some of those decisions in how to distribute the ball and dribble the ball, because successful dribbles are going to be important for a guy like Indiana Vassilev, who we know has the potential and the ability to make players swing and miss when they're coming in for tackles.
Yeah, and for Indiana, it's more about getting back into playing in that position. He was playing as a number 10 and doing great. Now he's back to where he was playing at the beginning of the season. He's going to be that box to box midfielder. So it will take a few games for him to adjust, but he's still very important for City. And now with Jabulo Blom, we don't know if he's gonna play 90 minutes. I still think he will start, but having the confidence that you have Jabulo Blom covering, I think Indiana can still be a great asset for City on the offense.
Yeah, and knowing that you're probably going to have Blome for a pretty good amount of the game, you're going to rely on Indy in the mid. How is San Jose going to be attacking us? And some of the advanced metrics really speak to their ability to do multiple things on the field at any given time. They are league average in both direct speed and passes per sequence. We know St. Louis is very high in their direct speed and very low in their number of passes per sequence. San Jose toes the line, so they're willing to play the ball both ways. They're eighth in the league in the number of open play sequences with 10 or more passes, but 11th in the number of those sequences that result in a shot, meaning that they do like to string together a lot of possession based attacks, but they are very, in comparison, they don't result as much in a shot. They're less efficient in their finishing when they string together these 10 plus passes and try to play the ball through and around St. Louis. And in addition to that, it's interesting to me that San Jose is bottom 10 along with St. Louis in the number of open play sequences that start inside their own half and ends in a shot or a touch in the opposition half. They like to build up, and they're going to start very deep. They like to play out of the back a little bit, but they're very prone to a good press, and they're inefficient in ending those long sequences with a shot on target. I think this gives St. Louis a lot of potential to, if they're strong with their push points, where Joaquini or what's a Stroud or an Alm or an Ostrak are able to put a lot of pressure and force some bad passes out of the back. That could be one of the very important keys. Is St. Louis able to finally string together one of those high press turnovers that result in a goal? Carnell said this last game they had 25 of those and they were inefficient in their finishing. This to me could be a very big opportunity to finally get back on track there.
Yeah, very successful yesterday with the press, just that it couldn't take advantage of those opportunities. And the style San Jose plays, it fits what City does with the press. So maybe this time it will work. But it's gonna be a different game than what we saw back in March when San Jose was here. City won 3-0. Just thinking a little bit about the successful press. City had a goal from a back pass that Joao Klaus recover, and that's when people started talking about St. Louis being gifted goals. But we always say that's just the result of what St. Louis is doing with the press.
And it's been a bit since we've seen a goal result from that, but we've seen consistency in their willingness to push themselves up the field in some of the smart moments that they find. St. Louis is still second in high turnovers forced. San Jose is 21st in high turnovers forced. So if you're thinking about how they're going to attack us, they're not a big pressing team. I think they're going to allow St. Louis to play out of the back a little bit. They're willing to have Tim Parker make those decisions like we saw against Real Salt Lake. Parker to Bartlett or Hebert, whoever ends up being back there, they're going to have to be very smart decision makers in how they find openings to our midfield, to our wings. We know St. Louis can kind of spray and play, so to speak, where they send the ball along in hope that a guy like Joaquini is able to wrangle it. But that isn't as likely to me to find a lot of success. I would like to see more of an involvement in Jabulu Blom in that area. I think he has the opportunity and ability to be more of that true pivot, and we can play the ball through him, whether it's to our wings or otherwise. One of the other things, Santi, is the Earthquakes like to press higher on their right side of the attack. Looking at some of the percentages throughout the field in their possession, I found that the right side of the attack, where Christian Espinoza likes to play, ends
Mhm.
up creating a lot of opportunities in their attacking third. So where you would see our left back play. And that's very important in where I'm taking this because they also cede possession in their own right side. So knowing that they push higher up the field on their right side and they allow opportunities on their own right on our left, to me, this might indicate that St. Louis would have more success having a defensive minded left back in that 4-man back line, meaning a Kyle Hebert would find himself back in this position to be most effective in preventing that. I'd like to even take this as far back as the Real Salt Lake game, where some of Tim Parker's being exposed in certain areas was because he didn't have another defensive minded backline partner back there to help cover and protect some of those gaps. We know Johnny Nelson was so high up on the field in those moments. So Kyle Hebert being on our left, I think that gives Tim Parker not just a measure of reassurance that he has help back there, but it will definitely help against a Christian Espinoza in that part of the field.
Yeah, yeah, and containing Christian Espinosa will be one of the keys of this game. And yeah, Kyle Heaver will be back from suspension. Did you know this was Kyle Heaver's first red card if you go back to MLS Next Pro and his college career?
Yeah, I didn't know about college, but I knew in Next Pro he didn't pick one up. That's interesting given how he accumulated them.
Yeah, 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 because it was really short time frame, but yeah, he didn't have any in college. First red card in a long time. Obviously, first one in MLS, but he's back. I guess the positive is he's rested, so he's ready to go. He will be ready to fight Christian Espinosa on that right side.
Well, Santi, we're running a little short on time, so while we finish it up, let's look at some of our predictions, the lineups. I think we probably could have gone an entire half an hour talking about the potential lineups, but I'll tee us up with the fact that I think this is one of our most difficult lineups to predict of the entire season. Having Klaus out, having Leuven out, yes, those are holes that we need to fill, but we haven't yet found the answer to both of them being out. The answer to Klaus being out was a lot in a lot of ways Indiana Vassilev moving back up and what he can create with Nico Gioacchini. But without knowing what the answer is, I predicted Berkey and net. Obviously, I obviously have alluded to Kyle Hebert being a left back, Lucas Bartlett, Tim Parker being the center back duo, Jake Nerwinski still out there on the right, Jabilu Blom and Indiana Vassilev. I'd like to see start, and then my attack in this match, given the number of players that played Jared Stroud played 90 on Wednesday. We saw a lot of minutes being eaten up by Tomas Ostrak. I think he played 80. I have our attack looking at Celio Pompeu, AZL Jackson, Rasmus Alm, and Nico Gioacchini. And let me justify myself for a second because this would be AZ's first start. He hasn't started yet. I think he's earned it based on his play time late in the second half. I think it makes sense given the amount of minutes Jared Stroud saw on Wednesday. It'd be harder for him to regen, and coming off the bench is a more likely role for him as opposed to going 60, 70 minutes again. Same with Tomas Ostrak. He went 80. Tomas Ostrak, back-to-back games, he's gone 72 last weekend and 80 in the midweek match. That's a lot of minutes for Tomas Ostrak, the most I think he's had in back-to-back games this season. So I can see him seeding until the second half. And Rasmus Alm, I'm going with the whoever we see on the Thursday press conference ends up playing a significant
Mm,
number of
yeah.
minutes, coupled with the fact that Rasmus Alm was a sub against Real Salt Lake. I think he starts and is integral to that right side of our attack with Nico Gioacchini.
All right. So here is mine. I have Berkey. I have Heaver starting at left back, and then center back. I have. I'm debating, but I think Josh Jarrow is also gonna get a start.
I love it.
What I don't know is who will play between Parker and Bartlett, but I'm gonna go with Parker. Then Jake Nerwinski, then Jabulo Blom, Indiana Basilev. I also have AC Jackson getting his first start,
Hey,
but I do have Thomas Ostrak still in the game, Rasmus Alm, and then Nico Gioacchini.
awesome. So pretty similar. That's actually surprising. I don't think we didn't talk about this beforehand, so that's fun to see. We'll see how right we are. Before we go, Santi, do you have a score prediction for us?
Oof, score prediction 1-1.
You stole mine. I had 1-1 as well. I think that we've talked about Daniel's effectiveness in goal, St. Louis's struggles. This is going to be St. Louis needing to be more defensive minded because I don't know. They have yet to show us that their attack is there. I hope to see it, but on the road, I'm not banking on it. So, any final words before we go, Santi?
No, just for our listeners, I know the team is going through uh, some bad string of results, but it's a long season, and just trust the process, trust the players. It always has its ups and downs, but the team is in great form. I don't think anybody thought at the beginning of the season that it will be second on the Western Conference with 18 games played. So just continue supporting and trust the process.
Well said, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening to us on Flyover Footy. We're here on the Big 550 KTRS, leading you into the matchup late night on Saturday. If you're listening to us on a podcast platforms, check out our wind down that's coming up next. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thanks for joining us. If you can, leave a review, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos, City.